Mark Twain said, if we were supposed to talk more than listen, we would have 2 tongues and 1 ear. And another quote I like is Will Rogers, never miss the opportunity to shut up. Often I rent a big house somewhere and I invite my friends to come and visit me while I'm there. And sometimes these houses are like 10 or 12 people, and that's how many people I'll have. But I rented a house in Jackson Hole, and many of my friends came out to visit. We had a great time and we did different things during the day, but we usually had dinner together at night and fixed it there in our big house. One night, we got into a conversation at one end of the table, 3 of us, me included, and it became travel tales. And it was who could tell the biggest tale, who had, the biggest story. And it was always like, well, you've got that story, but let me tell you this. It was always just this ego thing coming out, and we were just into it like it was a game. I swam with the dolphin. Well, I swam with the whale. Well, I went up in a helicopter and I saw the whales and the dolphins. It was just a scene. And the people at the end of the table, 5 more people, eventually got up and left and went to bed or went over to somewhere else to read. And the next day I said something to one of my friends. I said, you left awful early last night. She said, well, the ego flying around there, it was so intense I couldn't get a word in edgewise. And I was just so taken aback and thinking, oh, how awful that was. I wasn't inclusive of the other people. I got involved in this group of 3. We had been all these places and we knew all these things and da-da-da. And I said, I'm so sorry. And she said, oh, it's okay. It happens all the time. And I thought, yeah, it happens all the time with people like me. I need to get that fixed. I need to be a better listener because sometimes I go to workshops or I'm involved in the workshop type process and I don't listen. One example is where there were 2 people in the workshop and we had a leader, and the leader said, I would like for you to tell me your story of your life in 5 minutes. And she asked the other person. And I thought, well, that's great. Now that person's talking and I can plan what I'm going to say. I know I'm going to mention this, but I only have 5 minutes, so I won't mention that. I'm doing the whole plan. I'm all ready for the procedure, right? And at the end of that woman's story, the leader turned to me and said, can you tell me her story? And I was guilty of not listening with the intent of finding out what I was going to say next. I have a friend, Ellie, and she is such a good example. When I talk to her, I tell her, this is going on, and then this happened, and this person said this, and this is how I felt about that, and I was really afraid. And I do this whole thing. And when I finally shut up, she says, what I heard you say was, and she can repeat back almost everything I said verbatim. And she said, am I accurate and correct? And every time she is, and I say yes, that's a real conversation. And I feel really good because I know I was heard. I know she was listening. And another thing about listening is being in front of someone or being close or being able to be eye to eye with them. It's not about being in a text. Today we live in a big, loud world. We have big, loud people, and I'm one of them. I just kind of fear that maybe we're losing our art of conversation. We're losing our art of listening. Everything is quick and bulleted. And I feel like that we must listen in order to communicate. And if we don't communicate, we can't have peace on earth. I think it's something to pay attention to. So the question is, how can we be better listeners? How can we be better listeners?